Okay, the lesson we would normally be doing today is on overtime and special allowances. Now remember, these are paid to people who earn a wage. So you've got to be earning a wage to be getting an overtime rate. So if I'm earning a salary, which we may talk about, or we may already have talked about, or we may talk about in the future, I don't get overtime. A salary just pays you basically to do your job. So if I'm a wage earner, then my wage is determined by what we consider a normal amount of hours. And if I work above those normal number of hours, or outside, such as on days or past my finishing time, or on days where I wouldn't normally work, then I am considered to receive overtime. Now, when I receive a normal pay, overtime is my normal pay generally times 1.5, which was called time and a half, or times 2, which is double time. Very rarely can I sometimes be on times 3, which is triple time. Most commonly it's these two. So for example, most people who earn time and a half is if they were to work a normal 40-hour week, and if they worked for an extra half an hour, or they may have worked for, anything up to 4 hours on top of their normal pay, the normal hours or their normal working week, they would earn time and a half. But if they say, for example, they may work on a Sunday, they may then qualify for double time for any hours they work on a Sunday. So if I give you an example, and I'm doing the example that's out of the textbook, and I'll pop these on Edmodo along with this video. So if I'm looking at calculating a wage, if John works for a building construction company, and his wage 1 week where he works 40 normal hours, so that's his normal hourly week, at a rate of $16 per hour. He works 3 hours, time and a half, and he works 1 hour at double time. What we need to do is we need to find his wage for this week. So his total wage is going to be his 40 hours, lots of his $16 per hour, plus his 3 hours, lots of $16 an hour, but he's getting time and a half for those 3 hours, so we're going to times it by 1.5, plus he gets 1 hour of his $16, but it's times 2 because it's for double time. Add all of those things up. You can type it all into your calculator in one step. Just be careful to double check with your replay that you've got pluses and times in the right spot, and you should get $744. Now sometimes people don't receive overtime, but they receive what we call a special allowance. So this may be for people who work in confined spaces. It may be for someone who has to do dangerous work. So it may be they normally clean the windows on the Sydney Tower, but if they were to do it in the rain or the wet weather or an extreme condition, probably that's not a good example because they probably shouldn't do it then, but if they were doing something and normally they would only do it during the dry weather, and wet weather suddenly makes it a different condition and makes it difficult to work in. Maybe it's extreme temperatures. So maybe there are people who generally only work in really hot parts of the mines, the coal mines, and they receive an extra special allowance on top of their normal wage to be able to work in those conditions. So as we said, confined spaces. It can also be isolated areas. So you may be a scientist that's working out in the middle of nowhere, and you may be out in Antarctica, and you get a special allowance on top of your wage for working in that isolated area. So allowances are also paid when you have an expense that's related to your line of work. So for example, you may have a special allowance for uniform. So you may have a special uniform that you have to wear, and you're given an allowance to make sure that you can get that workwear washed, ironed, etc. You may need to have, so let's say for example you work in the mines, and you work in a particular mine where you can't wash your clothes in a normal washing machine, so they have to go to the dry cleaners, so they will give you a uniform allowance to enable you to do that. Sometimes you might get what's called a meal allowance because you may be working overtime, or you may have worked through your normal meal break, so you'll be paid a meal allowance. Sometimes you're paid a travel allowance if you have to travel somewhere in order you to do that job, or you may be paid a tool allowance. If there's particular tools that only you have, or you have a ticket, or you have what we call an accreditation to use, then you may be able to be paid one of those extra allowances. Something else that may get you some additional set of work is where you are looking at casual work. So if you're someone who's casual, you may not necessarily be looking at overtime or allowances, but you may be looking at a different rate of pay. So if you are a casual worker, you generally earn a higher rate of pay than most people who are on normal wage. And the reason for that is that when you are working casual, you don't necessarily get the same flexibilities and the same conditions as someone who's a permanent or permanent part-time member of staff. So some of the advantages of working casual are that your hours are flexible. You can say, I'm only casual, I'm only working 1 day a week, and we often have teachers who do that. They may just come in when they feel like it. Your rate is higher, rate of pay per hour or rate of pay per day. Some disadvantages, however, are that you're not entitled to superannuation because you're not a permanent member of staff, sick or holiday pay. So you can't ring up and say, if you're on a casual worker, you can't ring up and say, I'm having today off because I'm sick. You don't get entitled to sick pay. If you have that day off, you just don't get paid for that day. And similarly, if you wish to take, leave for holidays. And some of those people often, unfortunately, may lose their job when they're not required. So if that industry, if that employer, the work drops off, the work for this casual employee is less, then generally the casual employees are the first people who are put off from a particular employer. So if I'm calculating casual pay, then generally it's done on a basis or per hour, just the same as we do if we're working out for a wage. So an example might be, Milan is employed on a casual basis for a fast food company. His rate of pay is $15 per hour. He gets time and a half on a Saturday, and on a Sunday he gets double time. Last week he worked from 10:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. on Thursday, and he worked from 9:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Saturday, and from 12 noon to 4 p.m. on Sunday. So what we need to do is we need to work out how much Milan earned for that particular week. Again, we can do this all in one step. So if he's working on a Thursday, he just has a normal rate of pay. The only thing we know that's different is that he gets time and a half on a Saturday and double time on a Sunday. So on a Thursday from 10:30 till 2:30, 11:30, 12:30, 1:30, 2:30. So he works 4 hours. So when it's Thursday, it's 4 lots of his rate of pay, which is 15. Plus, if you like, you can bracket it up so you know that's your Thursday. Saturday, 9:30 till 2. So 10:30, 11:30, 12:30, 1:30, and half an hour till we get to 2 o'clock is 4.5 hours. I'm going to enter that as 4.5 times his normal rate of pay, which is 15. But on a Saturday, he gets a time and a half, so I'm going to times that by 1.5. Plus, on a Sunday, 12 noon till 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4 is 4 hours, $15 is his rate of pay, but timesing it by 2, because on a Sunday, he gets double time. Punching all of that into the calculator, making sure again that you've used times here and plus in between, and you should get a total answer for Marlene's wage to be $281.25, and I think that's exact. If it's not, remember you need to put a ... answer and then put your rounded off to the nearest cent. Okay, this should be enough information for you now to work on exercise 1B, which I'm going to put on as a PDF up in the library and attach it also to this post for you to work on. I'll also put the notes on the Edmodo, these notes that I've written, and you can print them out and glue them in your book if you wish to, instead of having to rewrite them. I'll probably have a set copied for you by then as well. And you can work your way all the way through, and you can work from question 6 all the way through to question 18 of exercise 1B.